Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for stopping in with us. As you know, we're on a 50-state tour, and my guest is currently waving to you, although you know you cannot see him. We are standing on the side of the street here in San Francisco, and I happen to meet somebody pretty cool. His name is Scott Armstrong. And Scott, tell everybody what your passion is.
Baseball and words. And I'm 32 now, and since I was 3, I wanted to be the play-by-play announcer for the San Francisco Giants. So my entire life has been a specious attempt at
which we're laughing because that we just saw was the word of the day, and you utilize these words of the day, which is amazing and also indicative of your love for words. So perfect, well played.
Well, thank you very much for that. Yes, I have just always known what I've wanted to do in life, and that's not always necessarily an advantage. The current play-by-play announcer for the Giants was an excellent student at Stanford, but did not know until college that he wanted to be in sports radio. And I think that sometimes knowing what you want to do from a very early age can be as much of a drawback as an advantage. But I don't regret it, and I don't regret the journey.
Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, my closest bite was being in the last 3 to be hired as the pre- and post-game host for an NHL team a few years ago. I was in the last 3 people, and ultimately I was passed over for 2 reasons, both of them legitimate in my mind. One, the person who ended up getting hired over me has more hockey experience, and 2, I don't have a college degree. So I decided not long after that all of that occurred that it was time for me to pack up my life here in San Francisco and move to Oregon and get my degree. So that's what I've been doing.
So you know what's really amazing about that, though, is I always talk on this show, Scott, about the fact that everything happens for a reason. Life is a process, right? And I think it sounds like you're saying this was the point in time where life showed you your next step.
I think that's very well put. I just realized that the light had gone on and it was time for me to move on and try something different. They say that the mark of an insane person is someone who continues to do the same thing and expects different results. And it was just time. I had been to college earlier in life and it had not worked out. I was not dedicated to it. In my application essay to my current school, I borrowed a line off a longtime Major League Baseball umpire named Bob Davidson. Bob was one of the many veteran umpires who was fired in the famous labor dispute of 1998. And Bob, after spending some time as a talk show host in his native Denver and so forth, decided that he wanted to go back and umpire. He said, I needed baseball more than baseball needed me. So I ended up co-opting that line of his when I was writing my essay. Bob ended up going back to the lowest tier of the minor leagues and starting all over again, umpiring games with 19 and 20-year-old kids in the lowest levels of minor league baseball, and then he got rehired as a Major League Baseball umpire, and he's still there today as Balkan Bob. That's his nickname. But it's kind of been a similar trajectory. I had to go back and start over again in community college and do all the things that I had been hiding from, and I think that was the growing up process, if you will.
So what's your next move?
We really don't know. What we know is that I have
Who's we?
Everybody in my life, including myself. You know, there are factions of people who want me to move back here once I've graduated. There are factions of people who want me to move to Chicago. My best job opportunity or my best grad school opportunity or both might be in an entirely different place. We really don't know. I know I'm going to London for 3 months to study Shakespeare, and then after that, my diploma will be in the mail when I come home, and we'll find out.
Shakespeare is one of my favorite people, just so you know.
Well, I mean, that was a principal reason why it was such an easy choice to stay with this major. I mean, we have the Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, and I will be attending it. I've already taken 1 Shakespeare course this year. They're dropping the Shakespeare requirement at my university. They've changed the English major, made some major changes to it for the first time in 25 years, and no more Shakespeare requirement.
I'm sorry, hold up. That doesn't even make sense to me right now.
They're dropping it. They're changing the major in some ways for the better. They're adding the essays of Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I adore. They are adding that, but they are dropping some other things, like you don't have to take Shakespeare anymore to get an English degree from my school. I don't personally agree with that. It is an issue of much debate. We had the first folio in our art museum on campus. I went and saw it on Super Bowl Sunday. I think everybody's Super Bowl Sunday should start with looking at a copy of the first folio from 1604.
Tell everybody what First Folio is.
The first folio is the first published collection of all of Shakespeare's plays and poems, and those did not come out until very late in his life, and ultimately the best known copies of the ones that came out about 20 years after he passed away. But very few physical copies from 400 plus years ago remain in the world, but we happen to have one in our art museum for a while, and all English majors were obviously encouraged to go see it. And just looking at it there in the museum, in the Jordan Snitzer Art Museum, was an incredible, breathtaking experience, just to think about all the people who have handled this copy of the first folio, who have seen it in this 400-year time span, and it has the entire body of work of Shakespeare in it.
I wish everybody could see your body language right now. You're so intense right now, like your hand, like in the claw, and just.
I will also say this: not that I had a skin in the game, but the Super Bowl being as mediocre as it was this year, the Shakespeare First Folio was clearly the highlight of the day. The football game, which you would think for a typical American, particularly a sportscaster like me, America loves its Super Bowl. No. That was a dud compared to getting to see the Bard's work right there. My folks just bought me a book called The Millionaire and the Bard, which is about Henry Folger's hunt for the first folio. And Folger is the one who was able to put together the definitive Shakespeare library for the modern day. And that's a book I intend to read as soon as I have time to.
You know, something I really want to also let my audience know about is the fact that you are talking about college and everything that you're doing, but they can't see you, so they don't really know. I don't think we said how old you are, did we?
No. I'm 32. I flunked out of 2 different universities here in the Bay Area and did not go back for many years, and then decided it was time to start all over again. I have my associate's degree from a wonderful institution called Portland Community College in Portland, Oregon. Largest institution of higher learning in Portland, or in the state of Oregon, 70,000 enrollees. And I'm in Eugene at the University of Oregon, where I am very fortunate to be taught by some of the leading English professors in the country, like Ben Saunders, Martha Bayless. Kathleen Horton was my Shakespeare instructor, and she's very good. And so just to be in this cradle of people who care about literature and are able to transmit it to us in ways that we can understand and relate to the modern day, I'm very blessed. It's worth every penny.
And what I really want my listeners to hear from you too is the fact that you're so passionate about what you're doing, even when it just comes to school right now, going to college, when you did not have that passion earlier. And I didn't go to college either until I was 35. I graduated. I started at 30, got my master's at 40. So I was 30 also when I started. And so I just don't feel like there's ever a point where people can't start over. It's something that they love. And sometimes, you know, there's a big debate sometimes about whether passions are discovered now or you've always had it and you're just rediscovering a new one. Some people think that we've always had these passions, but I don't think that's necessarily always visible to us. And it sounds like you have had these things, but it's just come into clarity for you now as you've gotten older.
It's a very good way of putting it, yeah. I realize now that priorities needed to be rearranged, just sort of more mental clarity about what really matters. I know it's making my family happier. I know that whether or not I ever capture the job that I want or write the book that I want to write or anything like that, that I've at least made it to pretty close to the end of this journey, and I still have a lot of work left in the last 6 months here to see it through, but they can't take that away from me. And
that's funny. Wait, that's the thought I had too. When I got my grades for the very first time, I was straight A's, semester 1, and for some reason, that was a thought I had. As soon as I saw my report card, my immediate thought, unconscious thought, was no one can take this away from me.
Yeah, and I don't really know how, because I work full time doing all this, by the way, folks. I have had a job that takes 40 to 60 hours of my week away, ever since I moved to Oregon. So doing the community college thing for a year and now the university thing for 5 quarters while having a full-time job, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, okay? But,
hey, we all have to do whatever it takes.
But it was the only way, and I just decided it was time.
So, Scott, how do you plan on putting your love for baseball and your love for language together in the end?
Well, since I'm now finally committing myself to learning Spanish the way I should have back in high school and right after high school, I took 3 years of it in high school. Taking it now, 1, because I need it to graduate, but 2, because I want to. I ideally would get a job back in the sport, and I would be able to also carry on fluent conversations with all the players from Latin America in our beautiful sport who don't have a lot of people that they can talk to when they come to the States as 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. They confide mostly in themselves, and that's totally understandable, but I always felt like I was missing something, like I needed to be doing more to try to relate to the guys at the back of the bus who were just congregating with the folks who they knew they could carry a conversation with. And if I can relate to them in the same way that I'm able to relate to the English-speaking players, then not only will that make me more hireable, but it will just enhance, I think, everyone's experience. So I'm hoping to be able to bring that to an organization in the near future.
And you know what? I think there's a lot of fans who would like to hear from those players, and they're not being heard from. Do you think?
No, that's absolutely true. You always know when a player, and it's not the player's fault that the player suddenly doesn't, pop out of the sky and speak fluent English the instant he comes from his native country to the United States. It's not fair to put that on a person. It's a classic problem that we have in this country where we think, well, everybody has to learn how to speak English and do it rapidly and do it super well, or somehow you're a lower person. That's not true. So anything I can do to sort of bring those people into the light, where they can, they're thinking the same thoughts as any other young kid who's trying to make it as a Major League Baseball player. They just say it in English.
And we're rooting for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I want success for all who come through the game, and if I can help them in any way, then I'll try to do that.
So, Scott, are you on Facebook?
No.
What?
I quit. I quit. I didn't. I realized that I was better off without Facebook than with it. My mother, however, is on Facebook, and I think that she's like seeing the good and the bad. Like she's trying to stay away from my uncle's political opinions at this time of year. And it's,
all right. So wait. Let me just put it this way.
Sure.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, you are not on Facebook. I suggest they email me at Lynette@motivatemepodcast.com.
That works.
I will have your email address, and I can forward anything, any questions,
Sure.
any reach outs to you. Is that good?
Yeah, that works. I mean, scott@uoregon.edu works too.
Why am I saying I have to forward it?
Well,
Okay, no, I'm going to go back. Scott, if somebody would like to get in touch with you, what's your contact information?
scott@uoregon.edu, SCOTTA@uoregon.edu.
Very short email address, everybody. Very short. No problems at all. Okay, listen, thank you so much for having this impromptu sidewalk conversation with me and Chelsea over here doing sound. So thanks, Chelsea.
And now we're going to go back into where the sidewalk ends, as one Shel Silverstein would say. And it's been a pleasure talking to both of you, and I'm sure it's not the last time.
Thank you so much. Really, it was awesome.
And I talk to you, 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 and we love, and we hate, and we demonstrate. We try to relate. This is my breakthrough. Whoa. Said now, this my breakthrough. Whoa. Oh man, this my breakthrough. Whoa.